Everybody. So for the first week of October 2025, I wanted to do an update on something that a lot of us were really spiraling over. Not as much myself, but a lot of the people who have been perpetually looking for reasons to give up, even as they've started to wear thin over the course of this low-effort, self-proclaimed administration, that this low-effort dictatorship. There's been a lot of people who have still wanted to find reasons to never have to change the way that they feel, to never have to adjust to the new information, to never have to get their hopes up. And I understand them. I mean, I too feel like this is too good to be true every day, but sometimes things happen and they are too good to be true. They look like they're too good to be true, and I think this is one of them. So this is, but a lot of people have been latching on to everything that has been done over the past several weeks. Every cartoonish expression of authoritarianism as a reason to give up, and one of the big ones came this last week with a summoning of the generals to, I don't believe it's the Pentagon. I think it was held in some kind of different venue, but it was near the Pentagon. I think it was Quantico, Virginia, if I remember correctly. And so this was actually something that really was dangerous in terms of the serious damage could have been done to the army as an institution if there was some kind of physical destruction that took place in this facility with all of our generals gathered in one place. It was a massive security risk. You could argue that it was an intentional security risk, but you can't argue that anymore because there was nobody there that was ready to physically attack, physically restrain, capture, unalive the generals as they came in. So at least in terms of the reason why that meeting was held, it was still profoundly dangerous to do that from a security perspective. But the intention was not to do what we all thought was going to happen in January, a physical coup d'etat. The intention was not to do that. And frankly, I have said in numerous videos that I think that there was a window for that, and that window has closed if he wanted to do something like that. So then the other thing is the risk that was less credible, which is the things that were actually said there, the intentions that were stated. I mean, nothing about these intentions are new. Hegseth has been going on, blabbing on about the woke conspiracies in the military. He's been blabbing on about that for as long as he's been in this position, and long before that. Hegseth has been obsessed with the pageantry of the army for just as long. Donald Trump has wanted to use the military in some kind of coup d'etat for a long time. I have no reason to believe that if he wasn't demented and that if he had some ability to start a project and finish it, that he would have carried out a physical coup in January or early February of this year. And so thank God that he has probably dementia and inherited it from his family, because this country would be unrecognizable even compared to what it is without that. Fundamentally, nothing in this meeting was new, and the generals did not take it well. They didn't respond to threats well that were made their way. They didn't boo, they didn't walk out, they didn't take the bait, they didn't clap. They just sat there and just disregarded everything. Silently, with contempt, they disregarded everything that was said there, because it was, for the most part, either useless or unconstitutional. And then they left. And a boundary was set in terms of what can be expected of the military. And frankly, I think that boundary was set years ago. Not years ago. I suppose that this has done some damage to our perception of time. But months ago, that this line was set in stone. It was set in the ground, in the sand. Again. This line was set months ago when the physical coup that we all expected did not happen. Like, it is possible to... The American people are actually quite easy to demoralize. It's something that we shouldn't really forget. They are quite easy to demoralize. The fact that Donald Trump has not been able to do that says more about his weakness, and the weakness and cheapness and low effort of his team than anything that it says about the American people, because we are not in a good position at all. We wouldn't have voted for him if we were in a good position psychologically. And he did a very good job with getting us all to run away to our homes in the first couple of weeks. And he had the winter on his side as well. He was very good at occupying our screens, but he was never good at really making it final, and he was never good at making the world around us unrecognizable, making the reminders of his presence available. And that was good news, and it's the reason why half the people, or 2/3, or however many of the people that are going to these protests are going. Speaking of that, we'll have one on October 18th. Get prepared for that. Sign up for it. They're going to be all over the country, and even in many deeply red areas. So that's the elephant in the room about this meeting, though, is that people thought that a physical coup was going to happen, or people thought that some kind of Reichstag fire moment was going to happen as well. And they really tried to do that with a couple of weeks ago with Charlie Kirk. But then also people said no to it. And it's happening again with... I don't think that... Thank God nothing happened to those generals. But if anything did happen to them, it was probably... I don't think it would have necessarily been intentional on their part. Maybe it was. Maybe they were trying to create the risk of like an Islamic or some other attack on one of these... on these generals that they could blame us for and crack down I don't think it would have worked, but frankly, nobody took the bait, even if that was their plan. And nobody took the bait. Everybody that doesn't like Trump pretty much had more pity for those, at least most of us, had more pity for those generals than we had anything else. And so this was a very big moment. This has happened over and over and over again. These people that have been forever looking for a reason to never have to get their hopes up all the way back to 6 November. They've been forever looking for a reason to never get their hopes up. And I understand them. I was in a place like that at the very beginning. Frankly, there wasn't really that much of a reason not to have that attitude of, oh, they're going to roll in and we're going to be done in 3 days. But it didn't happen for whatever reason, and they've blown their opportunities to do that. Just like with the Charlie Kirk assassination and the crackdowns on free speech that they tried and failed to do. A lot of that was I have a theory about why people are reacting the way that they're reacting to this, on the right, to this restriction of free speech. They're not reacting the way any of us expected. I think that they would have been willing to give up their free speech back in January. They would have said, oh, free speech, oh, that stupid Biden thing, we'll throw it away. But now that they've had 6 months worth of free speech, including situations like the Epstein files, where they've gotten a chance to criticize their dear leader, with him in power, not with Biden in power, not with anybody they hated. They had their guy in power. They were happy to whatever degree somebody that is part of a self-deletion cult can be. They were happy about the fact that their guy was in power, and yet they had free speech still. And they weren't surprised by that. They expected it for some reason. A lot of them anyway expected to have free speech. They were fine with having it. They weren't that grateful for it like we were, because we knew that he would try to get rid of it, and we expected that it would be gone in a couple of days. And when they lose their free speech now, when somebody tries to take that away now, they have the degree of shock that we would not have expected. And so it is. But we've been seeing this pattern on our side over and over and over again of people that are looking for any excuse to never have to get their hopes up, and it just doesn't make sense. I swear this video is halfway between a fireside and theory, but it does not make sense, because you can't live on autopilot forever. You can't fight a fight like this one, a struggle like the one that we're in now. You can't just go through the motions forever. At some point, and this is something I think we're all struggling through, but these people that are doomers are not even trying. At some point, we have to actually have some kind of reason. We have to find a reason. And there are more of them by the day. Not enough, but there are more of them every single day. We have to find a reason to why we think that winning is actually on the table. Because it's the only option for us. The stakes are much higher in our case. So a lot of the things that were available to comfort other generations of people when they struggled in this way are not available for us because of the reality of global warming. And so we have to win, and we have to be well aware of the idea that there is a path to win this struggle, which is starting to come into view, and also to win the peace, which is a little bit harder. And we're going to need to focus on that a lot. Now that it's starting to become obvious that this is a struggle that can be won, now that it's becoming obvious that there are people on the right that would even stand with us now, not necessarily at the beginning, but now, fair weather friends they are, there are people on the right that would be willing to stand with us if laws restricting the freedom of expression were implemented in this country. Now that we're in a situation where it is starting to come into focus how we could win this thing. And I'm going to get at the very end to the big priorities of how we're going to win. I'll throw that into this video as well. But now that it's starting to look better, I think in terms of being able to win the struggle that we're in right now, I think that we have to have a vision for how to win the peace. It has to be something that works scientifically. We have to actually, it can't just be fairy dust that people don't believe in. We have to get the climate science community. We have to get them, and a lot of their funding's being taken away. It's pretty hard. But we're going to have to double down on making sure that they can create some kind of treatment plan that we can follow. And it's going to have to involve huge amounts of climate engineering, because those are the only options at this point that are on the table if we want to prevail, if we want to belong for this world as a species, as a project. If we want to belong for this world, that's what's on the table, is climate engineering, not just mitigation of emissions. That's not enough anymore. We have to get on their case to create a treatment plan, even if it looks like it won't be useful right now because the wrong people are in power, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? We need to create a treatment plan that will be ready in 2029 so that people can have faith that if and when we get to the other side of this rope bridge, which this rickety bridge that it was starting to look like we're going to get across anyway, when we get to the other side of the canyon itself is unstable, and we're going to need a getaway car ready for us, because otherwise it will all have been for nothing. And so that's really the elephant in the room in terms of this week, is that it's been another week, in spite of all the drama that they've been trying to throw at you. This has been another week of more confidence, more reasons for confidence than we've had in a long time, that this is survivable, that the struggle at least is survivable, and we really need to focus now on making sure that we have a pathway to get out of this situation. So this is a final little thing that I would say, and this is in response to a video by Miss Heather Cox Richardson, who is a pretty considered person about the situation we're in now. Far from perfect. Definitely with kind of an unoriginal view of the last 60 years. Bit too rosy. But in general, she's one of the better considered people out there. And more considered people out there. And she made an argument that a general strike would not be a good strategy because it would alienate a lot of Americans. And to some degree, I agree with that. I think that we are going to need to pace ourselves in terms of the amount of sacrifice that we take on, because we don't want to alienate. This sacrifice is going to be taken on at a level of everybody, not just the people that consent to it. And we don't want to alienate people. I agree with that sentiment by her. What I would say, I refuse to give up on the idea of a general strike, some kind of maximalist solution to this problem. I don't think that I think the midterms are far from being guaranteed to be free, let alone fair. I think that there are many things that could go wrong, even now, even with a physical coup a little less likely. I mean, ICE is still incredibly well funded. If they can't get any warm bodies into it, then they might have some problems, and they might end up just giving that money to themselves in a bunch of corrupt self-dealing, and just spend it on yachts or whatever. I'd be very grateful if it went to yachts rather than ammunition. But if ICE was what the people in the big beautiful bill wanted it to be, it would make many kinds of physical coups and the destruction of governments in places that oppose the self-proclaimed Trump administration. It would make those much more possible if ICE was what the people in the big beautiful bill were laying out when they funded it to the tune of $250 billion over the course of a single presidential term. That is insane amounts of money that they put into it. But again, maybe they just won't be able to find enough warm bodies. I'm starting to have more faith in that respect. But in any case, I'm very good at skipping around the main point. In order for an economic action to really be something that isn't just defensive, but actually moves things the other way, actually dismantles this dangerous government that we have, and makes it possible to have confidence in future elections and things like that. Because I still don't have an awful lot of confidence in them. In order for an economic action to really work and be an offensive action rather than a defensive, because I believe that we need the offensive actions. What it needs to be, it's going to need to do two things. One, it's going to need to rob the state, as in this case, the federal government. It's going to need to rob the state, lowercase s state, of its ability to discharge violence for the most part. It's going to have to be hard to get ammunition. It's going to have to be hard for ICE to repair their guns or buy new ones. It's going to have to be hard for them to get fuel and all the other logistical stuff that they need. It's going to have to be that people don't want to sell to them. It's going to have to be a big restraint. We are going to have to be a restraint on how violent government can get, on the violent abilities of government. And then the second thing that it is going to have to do is it will have to take away the luxuries of the incredibly rich people through graft or through giving favors and to politicians and receiving deregulation and all the ways that billionaires get rich, or again through graft if they're politicians. For these people who make a lot of the decisions in our government, inside and outside, we are going to have them lose access to their luxuries, their vacation resorts, their third and fourth mansions, their yachts, their spa days, their luxury remodels, the granite countertops they want to buy, stuff like that. If we can do those two things, if we can use an economic action of some kind to make the state not have as much violent power, and yes, that might in the long term lead to an increase in crime, but this isn't for the long term. This is for however long it takes to get the Republicans in the Senate to finally, and House, to finally admit defeat and to impeach their dear leader, because it's better for the country to have a functional government with a different president than to pretend that Trump still has all of this power and not have a functional government with a monopoly on violence. If we can force them to do the right thing, then that will end the situation that we're in now. And we have to also, for themselves, a lot of these people are selfish. We have to make their lives difficult. We have to make it hard for them to get to the luxuries that they crave, that we don't have access to, most of the American people. If it's hard to get to your yacht because the place where it's stored is closed, is out of business right now. If it is hard to get to your yacht, that won't be something, other than the people that worked in those jobs, who are the people who would be perhaps on strike. It would be their choice, maybe. I don't know how such a thing would be organized. But if it's hard for somebody to get to their yacht, that won't be something that poisons the American people against a movement like this, by and large. If it's hard to get access to high-quality, polished granite for a remodel of your house, that very few people actually do. Like, I've never, ever in my life lived in a house that had granite countertops, I don't think. I'm trying to think if I rented one time a place, but if we did, they were installed decades ago, and they were old. But I don't think that even that place had granite countertops. I've never, as far as I know, lived in a place that had granite countertops. All of this other stuff, the luxury vacation resorts and the private jets and all that kind of stuff, nobody is going to cry a million tears when it is hard for people to do those kinds of things. But the people who will, and the people who will be forced to change their tune, are the people in Congress that are currently cowering. And so that is kind of the agenda that we need to have. Things are starting to look better in the short term, where I still see the necessity of some kind of maximalist economic action. And there definitely is the necessity beyond all of this stuff. Whenever this is over, we're going to need to have a treatment plan ready for global warming, because without that, we're never going to make it there, because we're not going to have the resolve and the determination to get to the other side if we don't think that it exists. And frankly, we have every right to slack off if we can't believe that. If it's not, and I disagree with that, because we could always be wrong. But if we knew that global warming was just going to get us anyway, then we would have every right to slack off and not really do anything about this. So those are the priorities. This has been another one of the good weeks that we've had. Very good week for American democracy. I don't have any belief that things are ever going to go back to the way they were before those Republicans, those Republican influencers, came out against the possibility of restricting freedom of speech. When that happened, I don't think that we're ever going to go back after that. And that's a good thing for y'all to know. I know that's what I talked about in my last video, but I can't stress enough how big that is. So thank you all for bearing with me and my total all over the place rambliness. I probably sound a lot like, not much, with much more goodwill and love, but in terms of my presentation, I'm probably coming off a lot like the self-proclaimed president right now, and I'm sorry for that. Hopefully I'll be in a more cogent position next week, but I just had to make that for you. I've been having a very busy time in my personal life, but I'm trying to make these weekly the best I can. God bless you all, and I hope that you are safe and successful in whatever you do to fight against the destruction of democracy and everything else that makes life worthwhile. And we're doing a great job, so take care, everybody. Goodbye.